our first online practical class, that is the identification of bones. The bones, I think the bones and the skeletal system you have all studied in earlier classes, specifically in class 11. The skeletal system forms a major framework to the body. It is a system which helps in movement. It is a system which provides us protection, like in the form of endoskeleton. The skeletal system consists of the bones and cartilage. And about the bones, I think you all are very well acquainted with. The bones are basically it's a part of skeletal tissue. It is the hardest tissue. The hardness is because of the calcium ions present in the matrix. It shows a very peculiar system, that is the Haversian canal system. The bone cells are the osteocytes. All the things, the protein present in osseous protein, all the things are, I think you are well acquainted with. In this class, in this video, we are dealing with basically the identification of axial skeleton. The skeleton, as you all know, is divided into two major divisions, the axial skeleton and the appendicular skeleton. The total bones present is 206. Now, in the case of axial skeleton, it lies in basically the axial skeleton is present in the main axis of the body, and it's further segregated into skull, consisting of 29 bones, sternum, that is basically it's fused sternum. It's a single bone which is present in the ventral portion. The ribs, there are 12 pairs of ribs, and the vertebral column, which is consisting of 26 serially arranged vertebrae and 33 in case of infants. The further division of the vertebral column includes 7 cervical, that is present in the neck region, then thoracic, they are 12 in number, lumbar, they are 5 present in the waist region, sacral, that is basically fused to form one sacrum, having 5 sacral vertebrae, and the coccygeal, which is also basically fused one, having 4 coccygeal vertebrae. Now, regarding the identification points, for identifying the bones, you have to focus on very specific peculiar features. Otherwise, it's very difficult to identify in a given time. That is, for example, in case of a skull, I am just taking the bone one by one and focusing on the specific peculiar points by which you can able to understand the bone and also identify in a prescribed time, that is half to 2 minutes, which is allotted to you in the case of spotting. This bone is specifically kept for spotting. In spotting purpose, you have to identify it, you have to write the name, and you have to write 2 or 3 comments regarding the bones, each bone. This is skull. You see, it's made up of immovable joints. These are the sutures. You are seeing it. These are the sutures. These are the lines which are joined to it. This skull is made up of 29 bones. 29 bones. अगर आप इसको specifically categorize करें, तो 14 are facial, 8 cranial, 1 bone which is present at the base of the skull is the bone which do not articulate with any other bone, that is the hyoid bone, and the 3 are the ear ossicles present in each ear. The total 6 ossicles, which are I think you are acquainted basically with the name of these ossicles. They are malleus, incus, and stapes, also called as hammer, anvil, and strips on the basis of their shape. Now this is the skull. I think there is no need for any further demonstration and explanation. It's very easy. You can easily understand and identify it. Now coming to the second one, this is basically the mandible. Very easily you can identify. These are sockets for the jaws. This is a bone basically which is also called as lower jaw. This portion is called as ramus of mandible. This is the angle, and this is the whole body. This hole which you are seeing it is the mental foramen. Now about the processes. This is small process is a coracoid process, and the long one is the condylar process. This is the mandible, and you can easily identify these are the sockets of the sockets present for the teeth. This is mandible. Now there are 12 pairs of ribs. They are divided into 3 categories: true ribs, false ribs, and floating ribs. True ribs are those in which the anterior is joined with the sternum and the posterior is attached to the vertebral column, that is the thoracic vertebra. In case of vertebrocondyl and false rib, which are 8th, 9th and 10th pair, the anterior end is joined with the 7th typical rib. And in case of 11th and 12th, the anterior end is free, that is why they are called as floating ribs. So this is all about the ribs. See, this is the 7th typical rib. It is somewhat 7 shape like structure. This is a flattened rib. See, this is the head portion. This is again forms the angle portion of the rib, and this is the costal groove. This is 7th typical rib. Now about all these 3, I am again revising it. This is the skull, this is the mandible, and it is the 7th typical rib. Again, I am focusing the feature. This is basically the head portion of the rib. This is about the angle, and this curved portion is highly flattened, and this one is called as the costal groove. It is 7th typical rib. Now we have basically discussed the skull, the mandible, and the 7th typical rib. Now we are basically focusing on the various vertebrae. It is cervical, thoracic, lumbar, sacrum. Now coming to the category, that is the first one, that is the cervical category. Before focusing and before discussing about all these things, it's very important when you are identifying a particular vertebrae, you have to focus on the 3 things. What are these 3 things? One is the centrum, the second one is the neural spine, which is projected from this side. These hangout processes are the transverse processes, and these 2 holes which you are seeing at the edges, they are the arterial canals. These are the passages basically the passage for arteries. This whole structure is the neural canal. In the first case, that is in the case of cervicals, you will see these two arterial canals which are not present in any of the vertebrae like thoracic, lumbar, sacrum. These are not present. तो ये arterial canals आपको सिर्फ cervical में दिखेंगे. अगर आप देख रहे हैं, if you are seeing that the centrum is reduced, arterial canals are there, transverse processes are reduced, and the neural spine is absent. This means this is the first cervical vertebrae, that is atlas. Now in the second case, that is the second cervical vertebrae, the name is given is axis. This is a very important one. The various important characteristic feature it possesses. The first thing is the projection of the tooth-like process from the other side of the centrum, which is called as odontoid process. Now see this vertebrae. Again, you see the centrum in this case is concave. It is projected into a tooth-like process from other side. The name of the process is odontoid process. And the third thing, that the neural spine is bifid, and again you are seeing the 2 arterial canals in it. So if you are seeing all these characteristic feature, and the specific one is the presence of this tooth-like process, that is the odontoid process, this means it is the second cervical vertebrae, that is the axis vertebrae. The first thing you have seen is the name given for the cervical is atlas. The second is the axis, and the 3rd to 7th, they are not having any of the specific peculiar feature like that of the atlas and axis, and it is the typical cervical. You can identify simply by seeing that the 2 arterial canals are there. In all these cervicals, you also see that the transverse processes are not well developed. They are highly reduced as compared to the other of the vertebrae like thoracic and lumbar. Now concentrating on the other two, that is about the thoracic vertebrae and the lumbar. If you are not seeing any of the arterial canals, centrum is also not reduced, and neural spine you are seeing, again you have to focus on the 2 things. You have to focus on for identifying the thoracic and lumbar, you have to focus on the neural spine and the type of centrum. If you see that the neural spine is pointed and sharp, and the centrum is somewhat heart shaped. This means, and again you see the neural canal, which is also basically ubiquitously present in the cervicals also. So this means it is the thoracic vertebrae. And when you compare it with that of lumbar, you see and concentrate on the neural spine. The neural spine is broad and blunt in case of lumbar, and the centrum is highly thick and stout. See and compare the centrum and the neural spine of these two vertebrae. In case of thoracic one, the neural spine is highly pointed and sharp. In case of lumbar, it is basically broad and blunt. Again, see the centrum. The centrum is highly stout and thick in case of lumbar. In this case, it is heart-shaped. So when these two characteristic features are present, you basically, in case of the neural spine is pointed and the centrum is somewhat heart-shaped, it is the thoracic one. When the neural spine is broad and blunt, centrum is thick, stout and somewhat oval in shape, this means it is the lumbar vertebrae mainly present in the waist region. Now what we have learned, we have studied the skull, we have studied the mandible. This is 7th typical rib. Again, these are the cervicals, atlas, that is the first cervical vertebrae. The second one is the axis, and the third is the typical cervical, and this is the thorax, and again the lumbar one. Now this is the sacral vertebrae, sacrum, which is present in the pelvic region. This bone, this is somewhat triangular shaped bone, and these are the sacral foramen, that is the holes for the fusion, because this bone is formed by the fusion of 5 vertebrae. So this is a bone which is present in the pelvic region, and these are the sacral foramens. Okay. So all these things which we have studied, this is about the sacrum, and this is all about the identification of the axial vertebrae, axial skeleton. This is all about the identification of the axial skeleton. Thank you so much.